Hello and welcome to the 1985 FM podcast. It's February 21st, 2013. We are joining you via video today for a very special episode with the announcement of the PlayStation 4. I'm joined by Brian Jensen and Nathan Mayer.
Yeah.
Compelling stuff, guys. Thanks. All right, so how's everyone doing this week? Are you guys excited for our first video podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's not to be excited about?
Yeah, I'm gonna be
very exciting occasion.
All right, well, let's hope we do fucking video media justice here. Let's get started. All right, so yesterday was the Sony's big See the Future of PlayStation event. We all watched, we all saw, and now we know that the PlayStation 4 is indeed what they were excited to reveal. They went over their philosophy of how it's all about the games, making it very intuitive and simple for people to find new ways to engage the content that's available. And they went over some of the tech that's going to be inside of it. They went over the games. They showed the new controller, PlayStation Eye. They talked to a few of the developers. They showed off some of the games. But let's just get started with, first off, the specs of the system. Nathan, you want to kind of give us a brief kind of rundown of what you think is really important about what they revealed?
Basically what we're looking at here is, at the heart of the system is a single chip that has both the CPU and the GPU integrated. And actually what's interesting about this is that the GPU, even though they had to incorporate both in the same chip, the GPU is actually fairly robust. It is based on current generation Radeon technology from AMD at close to 2 teraflops. And the CPU is also based on AMD, their mobile Jaguar architecture at 8 cores. Rumored clock speeds are about 1.6 gigahertz, but Sony did not confirm that in particular. But I think one of the most exciting things about what they announced at the conference is the memory. Now, the rumors for the longest time were that 4 gigs was going to be the amount of memory allotted to the system. And, of course, has to share that with the OS and background stuff and all that. But then they kind of surprised everyone with the announcement of 8 gigabytes. This is very fast memory. This is GDDR5, this sort of memory they use in high-end graphics cards. And that's fitting because the memory has to be shared with the graphics chip. But potentially all 8 gigs runs at a high enough speed that the graphics can actually take advantage of it. And this means that textures can be insane. And in terms of performance, you have like virtually no bottleneck here. They quoted 176 gigabytes per second, which is actually very high end. Pretty close to top of the line right now. We'll see what happens in around the holiday season. I mean, very robust. Obviously, one of the bigger showpieces of the technical side of the system, at least under the hood.
They seemed pretty excited about showing that 8 gigs of RAM.
Well, what's funny is actually, like today, I was just reading an article on Eurogamer. Now, Eurogamer was one of the sites that was most adamant about the 4 gigs of RAM. And they come out reacting to the announcement of 8 gigs, and it's like, well, this took us by surprise. But according to what they said, actually developers were surprised too, because a lot of what's has been made for the system up to this point was apparently made with the 4 gigs in mind. So this is sounding like a last-minute change. As far as, like, of course you expect the Blu-ray drive. They did not go to the 100 gigabyte standard that we can tell. And of course, you're going to have a mandatory hard drive storage. This is something that they did with the PlayStation 3, and we're expecting very large hard drives. No specifics yet. And plenty of I/O support. Kind of surprising, they're including USB 3.0.
Right.
So that could open things up to some peripherals and things of that nature. But I guess speaking of peripherals, let's talk about the controller.
Okay.
So obviously it's a little bit different from the DualShock 3 in that it's called the DualShock 4 now. And
that's different. That's definitely different.
Yeah, that's the only major difference. Otherwise, it looks exactly the same. No.
So clever.
I mean, they slapped on a touchscreen, which is kind of interesting. I'm not really.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Why.
Like, I mean, we've talked about this about, like, I understand like the idea of a touchscreen, but the placement and its actual practical application, we're not really certain how it goes. We were talking about possibly it being used as like a mouse pointer on the store. That seems like a possibility. Can you think of any other reason to have this pad other than aside from like maybe
honestly
uses?
I think probably one of the things that they might be shooting for is the PlayStation mobile games that are going to become, or Sony's trying to make ubiquitous across multiple platforms. Now you're going to have that touch support. So say, for instance, you want to play, for whatever reason, Jetpack Joyride on the system. Instead of pressing a button to make him fly, you can now touch the screen because that's authentic.
That's a good point, yeah.
I don't know, like Angry Birds, you could pull back on your finger on the little touchscreen and, but other than that, it seems like one of the more gimmicky things. I mean, honestly, at this point, what can you add to a controller? I mean, other than cranking up the price of the thing to stratospheric levels with like an HD screen or something, I think this is trying to be a fairly cost-effective controller, maybe adding slightly more than the 360 controller, but certainly a lot more than the PlayStation 3's DualShock 3. For the first time, you got a jack on it now. You can directly plug in a headset, and it seems like it seems from what I can tell that this might be actually just a universal 3.5 millimeter jack, which means no proprietary stuff necessary. Using a very popular USB micro port on it, so you get all your charging needs using just any cord that you probably already have.
Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the integrated move functionality.
Yeah, I mean, like it has like a light bar. They kind of hinted that this is more of like a kind of just a simple like this is the blue player, this is the red player, and stuff like that. But they didn't really elaborate in terms of the motion tracking. Obviously, to talk about the motion tracking, you have to also talk about the PlayStation 4i, right. Which they also showed very briefly. I mean, really just an image, and they just kind of mentioned it in passing. They're saving a lot of this info, obviously, for future conferences. But you did see the stereo cameras. They advertise 85 degrees of viewing range and 4 microphones. So I guess it's going to be really sensitive to sight and sound.
Yeah, they're trying to be able to capture your sound positioning, and with the 2 cameras trying to get like a fix exactly where you are. Hopefully it's gonna be as robust and powerful as they seem to be.
I mean, obviously there's not like I'm not seeing anything about like an infrared camera or anything like that.
Right.
This isn't Kinect. This is, as the name implies, this is a more advanced version of the original PlayStation Eye. So it has 2 cameras instead of 1. I'm sure they're high resolution as well. There's just virtually no information about that, though. But they did.
What's that?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna like mention the hardware encoding and decoding that they're integrating as well. Now, this is something that we saw in Durango rumored specs too, so I'm not sure if this is an advantage in Sony's favor, but they're integrating with their stuff with Gaikai, which they acquired last year.
Right, yeah, the Gaikai, the acquisition they did last year added Gaikai to their roster, and this kind of ties into the controller because they do have a new feature on the controller called the share button, and it allows you to take excerpts from your gameplay and then transfer them onto their cloud service. And Gaikai, they were a big part of the conference yesterday, just kind of promising everything that they were going to do they were saying that they're going to be the most lightning fast network, obviously exclusive to PS4. The share functionality from the controller was going to be a big thing. But some of the more really groundbreaking kind of things that they announced were the instant play. After you've downloaded, you can instantly play downloadable titles. I think that's a pretty cool next level thinking kind of approach. They also had the kind of the try before you buy stuff, which could be a thing an hour of playtime, and then at that point decide whether you want to play it kind of thing.
I think that's a really big deal, the instantly playing games that you see on the PlayStation Store. I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of fee involved with these Gaikai stuff because this requires a whole network infrastructure running in the background, and this is going to be quite a cost burden for Sony to have up and running. But I mean, honestly, this is one of those things where this is could be a real competitive advantage in Sony's favor because this isn't just something that you can set up on a whim. This is a lot of proprietary technology. A lot of this sort of backdoor or background stuff that the networking and the hardware and everything that you don't see, that's not visible on the front end, is just takes a lot of money and research and the sort of thing that Microsoft would be hard pressed to duplicate just by spending money and just dedicating a few years to doing. I mean, honestly, it could be a big deal for them. Maybe even a game changer.
I think it definitely is a big deal for them. I think if you put Gaikai aside and think about what they really announced, this was kind of the thing that they put front and center. Knowing this was one of the things that really differentiated them from what their competitors might do. I'm not saying that they've necessarily showed their whole entire hand, but this is one thing that they are confident in, and they put front and center at their first coming out party.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a risk too that the promises that they're making, I mean, that a lot of them weren't super concrete. They're like, well, this is something that we want to have eventually. And
right.
One of the things that's kind of got me excited is that actually, it's kind of funny. A lot of people were hoping that they would just get to the point with the conference before it started and just not mention anything else except the PlayStation 4. But I'm glad that they brought up the Vita, because the Vita sounds like it's being integrated in some really interesting ways using the Gaikai technology. In terms of the remote play functionality, you are not going to be able to duplicate this sort of thing on the PlayStation 3 or with the previous version of remote play. This sounds much more robust.
Possibly with the Wii U, though.
Possibly with the Wii U. Now, the Wii U, here's the thing, though. The Wii U uses a direct connection with the console, and you are limited more in terms of range when compared to a technology like what they're showing here with the Vita that uses your home network. So potentially, if you live in a fairly large house, you could be upstairs while your console is downstairs. And of course, Gaikai is an internet-based technology as well, so then that opens the possibility to maybe having remote play for PlayStation